and this is the thing too, is like a good friend of the channel, DSNY, who I absolutely love, Jack. He made a tweet recently saying like, well, if Chapek is all about the audience, and why doesn't he like fix the Genie Plus thing? But the thing that I think Jack misses on that point is that, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, and I'm not privy to the internal data at all, but we sort of live, all of us do, myself included. I am neck deep in this Disney stuff, okay? And I live in the bubble as well. But we kind of live in this echo chamber where we see people on social media complaining all the time about Lightning Lane, Genie Plus, yada, yada, yada. But what we're seeing on a daily basis is not necessarily what the average public is really complaining about. So when you say like, well, Chapek should look at the data and fix Genie Plus, well, he might be looking at the data. Just because he's not looking at your tweets and your complaints on Twitter in that little bubble doesn't mean that he's not reacting. The data from the general public might be through the roof for Genie Plus. I don't know. I really don't, but he could.
That's a really good assumption, because a lot of the times when you do read the tweets and you read the comments,
right,
it's coming from those Disney fandom groups, you know, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter. So yeah, so technically that isn't the full amount of data, you know, that, you know, if you take an encompass of everyone who is going, and maybe that is why Chapek is kind of leaning more towards that everyday family go buy a 5-day ticket, because that's the data.
That's the data. In our bubble, we're seeing a lot of complaints that Disney is focusing too much on franchises. Do you think the general public gives a shit about how many franchises are in the Disney parks? Not at all. They want that Marvel ride. They want the Frozen ride. They want the Minion ride. They want the Harry Potter ride. It's us in our little bubble that don't like it. But like when you're in the bubble, though, it feels like everyone's complaining about it. But the data probably is different on Chapek's desk than what we're seeing on Twitter. You know, I think that there's a big gap, I think, between what the fandom is complaining about and what the actual data is. And that's why I think there's this kind of like sense of like Chapek not listening to us. Well, he is listening to you. He's not listening to the 12 people on Twitter, though, you know? So that's the difference, you know?
You have, you know, us as fans, and then you have GP, you know, you know, the general public. And the general public has you know, a radically different way of looking at these parks than we do. That's just the reality of it. And when Chapek talks about that third pillar, he's talking about the general public. Because we've heard what he feels about us as, like, you know, hardcore fans. He calls us the legacy issue, right? That's what he refers to it as. Yeah, and you know, sometimes our you know, thoughts and beliefs and all that, they overlap with the GP, and that's why we get some you know, certain things, and sometimes they don't, and that's why it's like, oh man, if they just did this. But it's like, yeah, but you know, there's 18 million people a year visit, you know, Magic Kingdom. It's not all going to be about you. And that's sometimes it's a hard lesson for fans to learn.
Yeah. And that is something that, as fans, myself included, believe me, I'm deeper in this stuff than even a lot of people are, you know, but we do have to recognize that we are not normal.
Yeah,
we are not normal.
I'm the spokesperson on that one.
We are not normal, and like,
you know, what would be very interesting? I would love to get two people on. One person who is a diehard Disney fan, who is part of these groups, who's an annual pass holder that goes regularly, and then get a non-Disney overall person where they love Disney, they go to Disney maybe a couple times in their lifetime. And I'd really like to like sit down and really go through how much, just on one day at the Magic Kingdom or Disneyland Park, how much that diehard annual pass fan person is, and just an everyday person. And that is honestly, just between those two people, that would give a little bit of an assumption of data of saying how much they would actually spend one day at a Disney park.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I actually do my own little, like, I don't want to call it research, but I kind of feel around a little bit at work. I use my coworkers as sort of like a litmus test as to where the general public, where the normies are, because they are not us at all. But they like Disney for sure. They like Universal. They like all the parks, but they're normies, you know? So I'll throw it out there. So what do you think about this? What do you think about that? You know, and just kind of gauge where they're at. And it's totally different. Totally different. Now, I will say this, though. I will say this. In my research, the normies that I talk to at work also don't like the reservation system. So isn't that interesting? The normies. These aren't the fanatics. This isn't me and you. This is the normies. I'm not going to name them, obviously, but at my work, there are at least several that can't stand the reservation system, and they don't have magic keys. So that's very, very telling, actually.
I think there was a reason why you had like Universal and Knott's and all these other parks drop it as soon as they were able to, right? Because I think for them it was an inhibitor to their business. Now Disney has unbelievable demand, which is why they can kind of get away with implementing a reservation-based system. And there are other attributes that Disney really likes about it, but it is kind of interesting. I have heard the same feeling that you have, OG, that the normies, they're not as enthused about this reservation system as you or I, because it just complicates a lot of things, even for them. And I talked about before how inhibited visitation rather than assisted in it. So
yeah. And those of you at home that are watching, if you're watching, you're definitely in our camp. But talk to your normie neighbors, talk to your normie coworkers, and kind of ask them, "What do you think about this? What do you think about that?" It's interesting because to break out of that echo chamber of our little bubble is very fascinating. Because sometimes you'll see they agree with us, but a lot of times you'll see it's complete opposite. Like when you're talking franchises and you tell a normie, "I wish Disney would not do the movie-based stuff," they look at you like you're a lunatic. What the fuck are you talking about? No. I want the Elsa ride. What are you talking about? That's exactly right. That's what they want. They don't care about Mystic Manor. They don't want that.
It's so want that.